So you gave a lecture this morning about boundaries.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. You know, I think this applies to everybody, whether you're a pet owner, whether you're a veterinarian, whether you're a nurse. As humans, we all have boundaries, right? These are our limits that we adhere to, hopefully, right? But you can have unhealthy boundaries or boundaries that don't exist. So when I think of unhealthy boundaries as veterinarians, I think of people who work too many days in a row without taking vacation or time off, people who don't take time during the day to take breaks, to drink water, to put food in their mouth, people that don't get enough sleep in the evening, people that are doing work on their time off, people that, I love my clients, but when you knock on my door and I'm at home and I'm with my family, that's crossing a boundary for me that I'm now then taking time out of my family time to answer questions and do things like that. So the focus of the talk was on, identifying unhealthy versus healthy boundaries, and then how do we enforce these healthy boundaries? And why do so many of us have unhealthy boundaries? Because I don't know about you, but I've given my personal cell phone number out to clients, and you do this, and you're doing it because you want to be helpful, you want to be accessible, you're worried about what will happen if they can't access you, but then afterwards, so it starts with guilt, but then comes the resentment. And that's the red flag, because then when you get the text message on Sunday at 10 o'clock at night, then it's like, whoa, now we've crossed the line because this is supposed to be my time, or I'm not on call, or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
So you tell me about some of your unhealthy boundaries.
Last weekend, so my friend's a boarded surgeon. He comes in, does a cruciate surgery, and a really good client, so they have my cell number. So does the dog sitter. And on Sunday, I get panic texts. Sunday afternoon, doing a family thing, get these panic texts, and it's like, so I'm fielding 2 sets of phone calls. So the guilt is like, well, I want to make sure the dog's okay, right? Of course. I can tell that they're panicking, right? And so I'm fielding calls between the dog sitter, the owner, and my surgeon friend.
Oh, wow.
Right? And I'm apologizing to my surgeon friend for talking to him because there's these questions going on, like we think he blew the surgery, quote unquote, right? Freaking out, going to head to so-and-so and send a picture. And I'm looking at the picture and I go, well, it doesn't look that bad, right?
Yeah.
So, but this wasn't like this, and so it turned out that 2 to 3 days post-surgery, you should expect some swelling and some bruising.
Yep.
That can just appear. Well, that was lost.
Yeah.
And they freaked out, and it was a situation where the dog sitter was coming to the owner's house to take the dog to an emergency facility.
Wow.
And that's when I got the call. And so, clearly my friend, the surgeon, was in a family thing, because like 20 minutes later, he calls me back, and I'm apologizing like crazy. He goes, oh no, I told him this, and he goes, it looks fine. So I sent him a photo and everything. He goes, it looks fine, whatever, right? Yeah. So I had to calm the owner down first, and then calm the hysterical pet sitter down.
Wow.
And then work with that. But it was like, that took, that was a Sunday afternoon.
I was going to say, how many hours?
It's like, the kicker is, it was about an hour and a half, total. But the kicker is every time that happens, see, it doesn't happen only once. Every time situation like that happens, the look on my kid's face.
Aww.
When I get a call that's pertaining to the business or...
Dad has to do work again.
Quote unquote, yes. And, and I'll be honest with you, I don't get that resentment. Like I push that aside, right? I push it aside. My biggest concern is lost family time, and how does he view, what I do, right? What I do for a living. Like maybe that's why many kids of certain professions don't become that profession, right?
Yeah.
But how does he view me, and where does he stand in that ranking, right? Because it's like I'm reactive. So it's like like this, and so he.
He picks up on that right away.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's.
And then I think sometimes, and I don't want to say what you're feeling, but I know for me, I feel guilty as I'm not a parent, but let's say it's a friendship that's affected or whatever, and it's like I initially feel guilt and then I feel shame. So you might feel guilt that, I'm with my son, but I have to answer this call, and then the shame takes over, which is I'm a bad dad, right?
Yeah, no,
or
exactly.
I'm a bad friend, or I'm a bad vet, or it's like no matter what, you're like navigating all these different things.
And then you justify it because that's the vet life, right? Oh, like it's like we justify, and I'm trying to work on this with the entire team. We justify the fact that we don't get out on time. We justify, don't expect to, right? Because that's your life, right?
Yeah,
it's like,
you signed up for this.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it's sort of that justification. Well, I signed up for this. I signed up for this as the owner. I signed up for this as a veterinarian. It's really weird, and it's like, it's interesting. But and you're right. You're dead on with the feelings.
I think there's give and take too. Like I do think a lot of this work we signed up for, but that doesn't take away from the fact that we need to set boundaries within the work that we've signed up for. So yes, I signed up for some long days. And I can do so many long days in a row. Until then, I know I need to take some time off,
right.
Or yes, I know that I signed up to be here for my clients, and I'm willing to be here for my clients, except on Sunday afternoons when it's my family time, or whatever it might be. And I'm not saying that needs to be your boundary, because what we talked about today is that all of our boundaries look different. And I talked to some vets that they're like, the biggest thing I hate is when I go to the grocery store and a client comes up to me and they're like, Dr. H, blah, 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 and they launch into whatever, and I'm like, I'm not working, I'm in my pajamas, I don't want to see clients, I just want to get groceries and go. But then there's other people in the group that are like, I love it when my clients come up to me at the grocery store. I want to be there for them. That's my favorite thing. That's why I work in a small town. This is what I signed up for. So there's not a right or a wrong response in that situation. It's what works for you.
Yeah.
What are your needs? What are your limits? And they're all different. And that's the hardest part from the client's perspective, from all the pet owners, that are watching, is you can't read our minds. You don't know what's right or wrong. And a lot of vets have this misconception, how can they have the nerve to phone me on a Sunday evening? They might think, like, of course Dr. T is going to want to know that this is happening. Like, of course he's going to want to be involved because I know how much he loves my dog. And that's fair.
Well, and I don't trust anyone else. I don't trust anyone. I don't want to go to a place I don't know. He knows my dog. He's going to give me the right advice.
That's fair. But if we're not okay with it, we need to be the ones to say something.
Yeah.
You can't expect them to read your mind. And I get, that's where a lot of this resentment, I think it's good because it triggers an awareness that a boundary's been crossed. But I don't think it's enough to just say, well, they should know better or they shouldn't do that. It's like, hey, you know what? I clearly need to communicate. I haven't communicated this well. Yes, you have my cell phone, but know that if I don't answer, then I expect you're going to call an emergency clinic to seek advice, or whatever the expectation might need to be.
That's a great expectation.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that we're slowly getting better that way. It's like being open. I see a lot of vet hospitals aren't open on Saturdays.
Yeah.
Right. Those types
I've been
of
seeing
things.
a shift towards
right.
that.
You're seeing shift towards your 40-hour work week, which the vet's like 60, but 40-hour work week. Where you're seeing that sort of shift, and I think that's good. And it's funny because one of my employees, she does Reiki.
Ah, okay.
And so she's like she analyzed us. So I had the whole team get free Reiki done.
Oh, I love it.
And she said to me, she goes, I see a lot of the stress that you have as ownership, but she said a couple things. She goes, you need to learn to breathe. And it's funny because since she told me that, it's like
You notice when you're holding your breath?
Oh my God. And even my it tells me to breathe, right? I ignore it, right? It's like so I'm not ignoring it anymore. Every time I say, breathe, because that is
Yeah.
You taught me to. That's a stress relief thing. So.
It is a huge stress reliever,
Yeah, so it's interesting.
Yeah.
I think we are keenly aware of the stresses that we have in our profession. I think people like Marie just give us the tools that we need to deal with it. I think that's the importance of things. And setting boundaries is definitely one of them. And it's so funny, the people who have the least boundaries are probably the most annoyed by that, right? But they're the ones who have the least boundaries. So it's a matter, then you have to internalize it. Okay, I have to set these boundaries.
That's right. Yeah, I think a lot of the times the people who struggle with this the most have put it on other people to figure it out and to change their behavior. Well, how do you make clients, not expect you to be available all the time. It's not about changing the client, it's about changing yourself. You need to communicate what the expectation is rather than waiting for, or my coworkers should know better than to ask me to take all their Saturdays just because I don't have a family. Well, if you continue to say yes to your coworker, then you're not asserting any boundary at all and you're enabling that dynamic, and it's up to you to say, this is a limit for me, And so in the well-being world, I am all about, you can't change anybody else. You only have control over yourself. So what can you do in these situations? Because you always have a choice, right?
Yes.
You can choose to not answer those text messages that you get on a Sunday afternoon, right?
Yep.
Or you can choose to not pick up an extra shift, or whatever it is, you can choose to leave a job if the job is horrible. Again, this applies to everybody. This isn't just in veterinary medicine, but
no, you're absolutely right. Yeah, it's funny. So so that's why I mentally think about, what if I don't answer that phone?
Yeah.
Right? So if I can deal with the ramifications of that, well, it's like
you weigh that out.
It's like even being called, like the way I deal with I always joke that when I'm not at the clinic, that's when I get most of the questions about management.
Yeah.
So the way I deal with it is you entrust your team and you empower them. You guys can deal with this, right?
Yes.
Like rather than, hey, don't bug me.
Yeah.
You can deal with it, because there were times where I said, like, it used to be, I overheard one say, when he's not here, he doesn't want to be bugged. And I never said that, right?
No.
But if that's perception, so I'd rather have it that I trust, or you have a chain of command.
Yeah.
That if I'm not available, you go here, here, and here. And I think that works out really well.
Yeah, I think that's just affirming what the expectations are. Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
So like you said, having an outline for, in this situation, I need you to, if the clinic's on fire, by all means, you got to call me. But in these situations, there's some stuff you can work through on your own.
Yeah. It's interesting.
Yeah. It's good. I mean, it stirs up a lot of emotion because, and this might come up, you can relate to this, I should say, as a practice owner, but, a practice owner came up to me after the session was over and said, I was getting really angry with you during the lecture because everything you said, I'm hearing it from my employees. This is like a theme now. Everybody wants boundaries and everybody wants balance. And he's like, I've got, all this staff that they don't want to work Sundays and they don't want to stay late in the evenings and they want a 2-hour lunch because, they're identifying their limits. And he's like, what do I do as a practice owner? How do I balance that? And I said, again, you're not going to be able to change your teammates, but you can engage in conversations with them. I said, maybe it's about being a little bit transparent and saying, like, I hear that you need time off on the weekends or that you need a longer lunch. I, as a practice owner, need you to cover 8 hours of the day. So if you're going to take a longer lunch, can you stay till 7 o'clock at night? Or, how can we work together? And there was a whole conversation around that. But it's hard. I mean, this is hard for everybody. And again, his limits, like the conversation was that one team member said, I don't want to work next weekend because I worked last weekend. And he was like, but you only worked on Sunday. You didn't work Saturday. So can you work Saturday this weekend? And she's like, no, I want a whole weekend off. And he's like, I don't know what the big deal is. And I said, but that's because it's you. So that is not a boundary for you. You are happy to work every weekend. Some people are not. We have to respect that.
Yes.
We are all different. So much. I mean, we could talk all day about this.
No, but because that sort of budding is going to lead to that employee leaving.
Yeah.
I can tell you that right now. I mean, who doesn't want a 2-day weekend? That's what a weekend is. It's 2 days, right?
I agree with you. I agree with you. And that's what I said to him. I said, can you give and take, and that maybe they work, alternating weekends. It's not one shift a weekend. It's, 2 days this weekend and then you have 2 weekends off. And I think the other thing, maybe you can identify with this, or maybe you've seen this shift, is that I feel like in veterinary medicine, we're having to hire more team members to do the work that fewer team members used to do.
That is an absolute trend.
I said to him, I think you need to get, because he's been a practice owner for a while, I said, I think you need to get out of the mindset that you've got so many staff working, 50 hours a week, covering this many days. I said, you are going to have to piecemeal a little bit. You might even need to hire in locums. You might need to get, a part-time worker or temporary or 1 day a week or a few hours a week to fill in the gaps and to provide the service. So, I think we need to be creative now in how we're managing our teams.
You're absolutely right, because so the shift, there's a paradigm shift in the profession where a lot of support team members are leaving the profession or just leaving, and there's a shift in the sense that Gone is that person who is your right-hand person that you can rely on to do everything. There's so many practices.
For 80 hours a week.
There's one person, right, that does everything. And so what I try to do is I try to spread those responsibilities out.
Yeah.
But absolutely, I am seeing individuals that the new hires you get, they're not, well, whether it's a millennial thing, whatever, it doesn't matter to me. You're not going to get that same, they don't want to work that same work ethic.
Yeah.
Because that work ethic was like killer work ethic, but they don't want to see
Yeah.
that. So I think that, and even though we have to do it, right?
Or that
We're coming
inflexible
up.
schedule.
Right.
A lot of the desire is just to have a little bit of flexibility.
Yep.
So how about we agree? I said to him, do they have a job expectation? Like, do they know they're expected to work 45 hours a week? If they don't know that, then how can you hold them to anything? But if they do know that, it's like, okay, 45 hours a week, you tell me when you're going to fill it in, and then we'll fill in the gaps. You know, and he's like, well, how do you do this for 45 people? And I said, you have a good practice manager or somebody who's in charge of scheduling. Like, you know, this is where, again, you can't do, everybody can't, one person can't do the work that, you know, of everybody.
Yeah, and then I'm trying to do this shift where I try to give employees 3-day weekends, right?
Wow.
So we went to the every other So
That's
it's all
great.
experiment. As an owner, you have to experiment. So instead of having one doctor each Saturday, we're experimenting with 2 doctors every other Saturday.
Huh.
And we only increase the team number by maybe 1, but it does give a team member 3-day, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or Saturday, Sunday, Monday off. And I think that balances their life out. What I see from their personal life is I see more little trips. Right?
Nice.
Right? So that is, it's interesting.